Hey everyone. See, we have some folks joining. We're going to just give some other folks a minute to join here, so no worries, we will get started shortly.
Hi, Jordan. How's it going?
Going good. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. It looks like we have a group of folks already here and ready to learn. So I will start with introductions and then we can jump right in if that works for you. I'm loving this green, by the way.
Thank you.
Vibes. Um, Thank you all so much for joining us. My name is Jasmine Knighton. I'm one of the optimizers here at Vine Skills. I help folks launched into Filevine as well as FVDA, and then I help to bring you all free help every week with the help of my wonderful colleagues. This week we have Jordan who will be going over FVDA. Before I let her introduce herself and jump in, just a few housekeeping things. I will be putting some helpful links in the chat. Here at Vine Skills, we do all things Filevine and Filevine related products. So for those of you that are just new to Filevine and need to get help getting launched in, or for those of you that have already been in Filevine and probably need some help revamping Filevine or you've added products, we are totally here to help. We offer optimization services monthly. So if you want to add us as part of your team, because it's much cheaper to kind of add us as a team member instead of creating a whole new role for that, you can totally do that. If you have certain projects you want us to work on, you can hire us for those. So I'll put some links to our website in the chat for those. I will also put my email as well as Jordan's email into the chat so that if you have any questions after and want to engage in any of our services, you have folks that you can reach out to. These sessions are recorded. They will be up on our website. If you all have suggestions for future free help sessions, we'd love to hear them. Feel free to email those over as well. If you all have any questions during this webinar, feel free to use that Q&A feature and we can get those answered for you. I think that's all. Jordan, I'll let you take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jasmine. Yeah, today is going to be focused on FVDA, which is Filevine Document Assembly, also sometimes referred to as Outlaw. And specifically today, I wanted to kind of kick us off and maybe showcase some of the new features from Lex. So I was going to actually walk us through a little bit of ContractsAI, which is a cool new software or software add-on that Filevine is releasing that ties into your FVDA team. So with inside of Outlaw, we can set up AI prompts. So when you upload maybe third-party documents or contracts or other things like that, or really any documents of your choosing, it can extract out key data points that you want to see very quickly. It does that extraction. I mean, it's pretty quick. I think it's within like a couple of minutes or less, depending on how long your contract is or document. And then the cool thing is you can then see those variables very quickly, or you can also build out a custom automation through Workato, which can then push in that data into Filevine. So then you can in turn add it into your documents that you're generating in FVDA. So I was going to kind of showcase that today, maybe answer any questions, and then we can always jump into an ask me anything type of situation for FVDA or anything like that. And if there's not a lot of questions, we might just kind of walk through some topics that we've covered before. So yeah, that's kind of it for today. Let me start sharing my screen, and so we can start talking about a little bit about Contracts AI. Perfect. All right. So we are in the back end of Outlaw here. Now, some of you on this call, if you have an Outlaw team or FVDA team, you might be at a different URL. So that's the first thing I want to call out. Depending on what type of services or where you're located, it might be different. So if you're a CGIS client, you might be on the high security server. If you're an FVDA client, which means you have Filevine, you're likely going to be on this server here. But we also have a couple other servers for our Canadian clients, and then also for folks who don't have Filevine, who just have Outlaw. So that's an important call out. But if you want to follow along with me, You definitely check out which URL you have. If you can't find that URL, I can show you quickly. Let me see if I have our sandbox open. I can show you where to find that in case you're ever like, I don't actually know what server I'm on. That's a totally fair question. So over here in our sandbox, if you go to your main menu, if you go to your setup under orgs, it will tell you right here where your Outlaw org is connected to. So this is the URL that you can then follow to log into the back end of Outlaw where you set up your templates. Okay. Awesome. So we'll follow along here. We are logged in. We are in our sandbox. We have a lot of different templates, as you can see, but for the most part today, we're going to be working out of this Contracts AI template. So previously with FVDA or typically your documents, when you click into them, like let's just give an example of this settlement calculator. Typically, you're pulling in a lot of these different fields or variables that pull in from Filevine. But you'll notice on our Contracts AI one, it's a different build out entirely. When I click in here, there's virtually nothing on the contract. It actually says empty contract here. That's because for the most part, when we go through and generate these, we're actually going to be uploading documents that you already have. So things like a master service agreement is a good example. That's one that we're going to use later to demonstrate how this will work. But I've seen firms use it for all types of things. I have some folks that are working in the fertility sector, so they upload different contracts where they can extract information. And you can also upload documents. This doesn't have to be just contract oriented. I know it's called Contracts AI, but as you can see, we can then build out just prompts to cover any number of documents. So we'll kind of jump into that as well. But the first thing we'll want to make sure we do is we do want to make sure we have Document AI enabled. This is going to be part of that feature. Now, of course, Contracts AI, this is an add-on feature, so you might be following along and not see this there. It's okay. If you're interested, obviously we can connect you with your AE and they can get you set up with a full demo, but we're going to be going through one today anyway, just because it is one of the cool new features that Filevine has released. So that is one of the things you'll want to make sure you have access to. Then the cool thing is when we come in here to our elements, this is also where we store all the variables that we're going to be pulling into our documents. You can see here, I have the option to add in AI extracted values or variables, right? So if you don't see that little sparkle next to any of these, that will mean that it's just a regular variable. So for example, if I just add in one here, you can see this one does not have those little sparkles, similar to if you're using Filevine, if you have the AI extraction or other things, it has those kind of little sparkles next to it in Filevine. That always means that it is AI powered. So you can see by example that this one is not, but these ones are. And so the easy way to come in here and to actually create these. Now, we don't actually want to create variables like we typically do in here where we add them into our template because we're going to be uploading that template again, right? So it does us no good to have the variables actually on the document. Where we actually want to code them is in the back end of the template. So they're there. It's almost like a metadata that when we upload our document to it, it's going to say, oh, hey, I have built-in prompts. I'm going to start running the AI on this document and extracting the information into it. And it'll make a little bit more sense later when I show you guys the front end of how this works. But I wanted to start with this as we go through here. So let's just get rid of this. I'm going to delete our test one too because we don't need it. So for example, these are some that I've coded out before. And so specifically in a contract that I've been working with, I want to pull in the effective date. I want to know when this contract is essentially starting. And so I have effective date coded out here. And when I create my new variable, I'm going to go through and essentially answer all these different questions. If I want this to be a text field, if I want this to be assigned to a party, and what type of data this is. So to kind of walk you guys through before we build out a prompt together, this is kind of just the layout of what you will notice. And if you're used to building variables or pulling them into FVDA or Outlaw, you'll notice this is a very similar setup, but the only thing that changes is this information here where it says use AI extracted value. If you toggle that on, you get a whole new set of fields there. All right. So on this, once we pop out the AI extracted value, we do have the option to do either structured or free form. The nice part is it gives you a little helper icon here to tell you which one is the best here. So this is best for clearly formatted inputs, right? So if it's kind of labeled, maybe if it says the client name in the agreement, or it says this is the effective date, that's a really great one to pull it in. And use for the structured versus freeform is going to give you a little bit better use case for pulling in those extraction pieces. And now for most of ours that we build out for our clients and also for demo purposes, we typically do freeform. It just gives you a little bit more customization, I'd say, and I think it works the best for pulling in those different prompts throughout documents because a lot of times people will build in prompts not just for one document type, but they'll say, hey, I want to build in a bunch of prompts where if I upload multiple types of documents, it can extract those out. So I just think that's an important call out when you're structuring these. I typically always default to the free form to just give me a little bit more wiggle room there.
Jordan, do you know how much extra it cost for Contracts AI?
Oh man, I do not. That's a really great question. I know your AE would have the most up-to-date information with that. So if you need help, if somebody in the chat needs help getting connected with that, we can definitely look that up as well. But yeah, I do not know off the top of my head. Sorry.
And I think that there's different factors that go into the cost. And so you'll really meet with your AE, very similar to like regular AI and Filevine. They do it based off of like how many projects there are, I'm sure, stipulations or conditionals that determine how much it would be for the contracts AI as well.
Mhm. I know for sure, I'm just speaking from experience because we've had quite a few Contracts AI clients come through us in the pipeline now. They are relatively small firms, so I do think there are some, budget-friendly plans out there too. If anybody is concerned with price, I think that they can definitely work with you on that. So. Awesome. Perfect. Okay. And then so jumping into the rest of this, when we actually build it out, we're going to get into this a little bit more, but the extraction instructions, previously, if you're using Projects AI in Filevine to do data extraction, you'll know that there are built-in prompts and you can't at this time really with Projects AI do too many custom prompts. Of course, you have chat with my case where you can do, it's like a custom chat bot where you can communicate with it there. But the really cool thing about this is that you can actually come in and you can build out your exact extraction instruction. So there's no limits. Obviously, with it being so open-ended, you do really need to hone in on what exactly you want to extract. Because if you just said, I want to pull in the date from the contract, there could be multiple dates. It could pull in multiple dates for you, and it might not be the date that you want. So you need to make sure with this style of prompt or extraction instructions that you are pretty detailed with what you want. So this is a good example of this. We're going to be extracting the effective date. I have another document over here. Let me see if I can swing it over. But basically, this is going to be our kind of mock-up document that we're going to be using. So you can see we do have an effective date here. We have some information, other things like this. And so we're going to try to be building out some of these prompts together so that when we upload this document, it's going to extract out that data. So that's kind of our goal for this first part of the call. And so what we'll do is if we want to come in here and I'm going to grab this back over here. What we want to do is we're going to first come up here to add a new variable. Now, when we're adding it, let's see, maybe we want to add in one for the client because we want to extract that information. When I add this in, if I try to just hit save or if I try to toggle on this AI extraction, it's going to tell me that the display name is required. That's pretty common. You can just come in here and type again client, or if you wanted to make a more I don't know, front end facing name instead of saying client, you could change that here as well. So it doesn't have to match this exactly. In this case, it just happens to. So you can see now that I've filled in, and I don't know if that's like too small for you guys. I'll zoom in a little bit more. Now that I've filled that in, I am able to toggle on the AI extraction value. So I'm going to come into here. And when it first toggles on, it's going to be set up to be structured. But as we talked about before, we really want to use that free form because it's going to allow us to pull in better information here. And not really better, that's not like a great term for it, but just more customizable as far as the prompt is concerned. Okay. So in my master services agreement that I showed you guys very briefly, I do have a spot in there where I'm talking about the client. So I'm just going to say, like extract client name, you know. We'll see if this one works. Sometimes they work right off the bat. Sometimes you got to really finesse them a little bit. So I think this one should be pretty straightforward there. But then maybe we also want to pull in, there's another contract date in here that we're probably interested in, and that would be the contract end date. So let's go ahead and call this contract end date. Got to populate it down here. Turn on our AI extraction and let's do our free form. And let's say, we can either say extract. Why don't we also try to say populate the contract in date? Sometimes you can get fancy. I see sometimes people want to say like, oh, put this into, year, month, day, whatever it is. But for this one, I know it does say in our contract, it's going to say October 14th, 2028. So we'll just hit save on that. So you can see we have quite a few different prompts built out already. And now what we want to do is maybe actually give this a test and run through. So what I'm going to do now, because I'm in Outlaw already and I don't have a custom automation set up as of right now for our sandbox, again, you can do that. You can push it through Workato. But I can come into here into my contracts. You don't have to search for this part. We're just members of quite a few teams here. So I want to come in here, look up my team, and then I'm going to go over here to this upload section. This is where I'm going to upload. And again, you're going to have to confirm team, mostly just for me because we're part of a few different teams. But I'm going to upload this master services agreement. That's a mouthful, I guess, master services agreement. And so then I'm just going to hit open here. This is essentially that document that I want to extract, right? So again, this is what it looks like over here, just so you guys know, we're pulling in this information. This one's laid out very nicely. I had this one mocked up as a test. I didn't want to use any actual client data in there, but this one's pretty straightforward. It can obviously handle more complex document. I have some clients that are running, on the daily 50 to 100 page contracts through there, and it's pulling out the data points. So this is just an example of what it can do. And then we can come in here, we have our document, we can name it this, we can keep it, you can see it already populated as Master Services Agreement, or we can change that name if we want to. If you wanted to say it's between Mind Skills and then like this Summit Tech, whatever it is, that's totally fine. Now, the last thing that we want to do here, we do want to select the template. So now that we've built out our ContractsAI extraction prompts, we want to use that template because that is how this is actually going to come together. So we want to come down here. We have our contracts AI. You can obviously name this something else. This is just one of our test environments, obviously, so we haven't named test, but you could call this contracts AI. You could also call this the contracts AI service agreement, right? So whatever you want to call it. And then we just hit upload. So then this will start processing the document. As with all things AI, I think a lot of times if we sit here and watch it, it's going to take longer than it normally does, just by Murphy's Law, I think, right? If we're on a call, that's what's going to happen. But to call out a few things as it's happening, you can see here by clicking on this, it is doing an AI analysis of the document. So it's reading through, it's only 2 pages, so this one should go pretty quick. Again, if it's longer documents or contracts, it may take a little bit longer for us. But then once it's done, it'll say here the date that it was analyzed, the pages in the doc, and then if there's any variables needing review. So this is an important call out. Sometimes when you build out your prompts, there might be a lot of information in the document or contract that it could potentially be that a variable. And so then if these are flagged needing review, you'll have to go in and manually look at the document and say, okay, no, this is the right selection. I'm going to select this and then move it on. With all things AI, I think it's important to call out that yes, this does make our job easier. It's more efficient, but also we still need that human component. We should still have a human involved, checking through, making sure that things are registering correctly or pulling into the document correctly, right? So it's not replacing anyone's jobs. It's just hopefully making it a little bit easier for you guys. So that has all scanned through. This is all looking good. Now let's see if it extracted the right information. All right, so up here at the top, we do have client. We do have Mind Skills Inc. pulling in here. That's looking good. The next one up, we have our contract date here. They got it October 14th, 2028. We have our effective date as well up here. And then we also have our service provider. So all of this is pulling in. These are pretty simple ones to pull in. Obviously, you could get more in depth and maybe ask it about the invoicing and payment. You could maybe say, hey, can you return all options for the invoicing and payment related to this contract, something like that. And the hope is that it would pull in 30 days of receipt, right? So those are some examples of prompts that you can kind of set up and use. And then if this did pull in, so if the contract end date, maybe this pulled in and the date was wrong or something else, I can actually manually come in here and I can override that. So I can go ahead and save that here, which is nice. And you'll notice now this changes the icon. So previously it had our little sparkle, it was AI extracted, but as soon as I changed it, it now becomes human reviewed. So that really tells you very quickly, okay, did the AI grab this and is this correct? Or did somebody go back and change this? And is that now correct or is this incorrect, right? And in this case, it is incorrect, right? I, as the human, input the wrong date. So, that's just something to be aware of when you're making these changes. This will obviously, you can overwrite data, but as with all things, you can't overwrite data. So just be careful with that. But it's also nice that it actually calls out and shows you if it's human reviewed or if it's all the AI still happening there. Cool. I'm going to pause there, see if we have any questions in the chat or anything. It's looking like the chat isn't there, but I'll give you guys a couple of minutes maybe to write any questions that you guys have about prompts, making them, the product itself. Let me know. And then if not, we can launch into just some more regular FVDA stuff that doesn't require any add-ons. So, yeah.
I don't see any, but I'll let you know if any pop up.
Cool. Sounds good. Okay, awesome. But yeah, that is the kind of the latest from Contracts AI. I know there was also released at Lex the ability to kind of do a chat with my document, almost similar to chat with my case, where you can say, hey, I want to rework, these paragraphs. Can you please like help me do that? So that's something that is in the alpha stage right now and was teased at Lex. I'm hoping soon we can have it turned on in our sandbox, but not at the moment. But that can always be another thing. If you have questions, again, Filevine is your best bet to kind of get those answered. But otherwise, let's just jump into some other FVDA stuff. Perfect. I feel like we've done the settlement calculator kind of recently. Maybe we just kind of jump into some other template building and we'll go from there. Hopefully, folks will have questions. But we can definitely jump in. I think I have a good test one here. Maybe we can start with some clause libraries, actually. Been building a lot of these pretty recently. But basically, these are a really great way to store boilerplate information in your documents. So instead of having to build in your same paragraph again and again throughout different documents, maybe if it's like a certificate of service, a signature block for a client, things like that. Signature block for like your letters, not for your client, of course, but those are really great ways where those are pretty static, right? You're gonna have them on a bunch of different documents. Instead of creating them every single time on a new document, you can build them into a clause library. And the cool thing is with the clause library is that it retains this boilerplate information and then you can easily pop it into another document. And if you make changes to the clause, it updates that other clause that you're referring to. So just to show you guys an example, we have some very official clauses about ice cream here. And so this one's particularly about the ice cream expansion and popularity. We can see over here that this is the title of that clause. So if I was trying to pull this clause into another one of my documents, let's just come over here to our test. We have a lot. I'm going to delete this one just so you guys can see how it pulls in. But basically, and you can pull in like the same clause into the document multiple times. Doesn't really matter. I want to show you from the beginning. So it's a little cooler reveal for you guys. But basically what we can do is come into here and we can insert a blank paragraph. Now, if you're new to FVDA, you haven't done that, feel free, you can click in, you can just hit enter and you will be in a new paragraph. You can also come up here to the top and you can hit paragraph here and it will insert that. Now we want to make sure it's a blank paragraph because we're going to be inserting the clause. So you can't, if I type in here and then I try to come over and do a clause lookup, it's not going to allow me to insert a clause. It does need to be blank. That's because you're already going to be inserting a whole paragraph or other things into the document. So if I come over here to my clause lookup and I type in my ice cream, you can see I have the clause for ice cream expansion and popularity. Now, if I had a very similar name between the different clauses and I wasn't sure, oh, is it this one or this one? You can always preview this before you actually insert the clause, which I think is a really nice feature. This one is very long, but not all clauses have to be that long. Some clauses are just a sentence or anything like that. So you can come in here, and if this is the one you want, you can just click and it will add it to your document here. So all this documentation, I don't have to recreate on all my documents. This will just be automatically populated there.
And if there are two clauses with the same name, like the very first one, when Jordan typed in ice cream, there was a number 2 in the blue box, indicating that there are two clauses named that, and you can toggle between the two in this preview. Yep, right there at the bottom,
Yeah.
so that you can see the difference there. So there are some visual indicators that, hey, you do have more that are named this, so you know, let me go in and actually look to see which one I want to bring in.
Yeah. For sure. That's a really great call out. And I think just like it's so user friendly too, because as we saw when we typed in ice cream, since I have so many clauses about ice cream, the really important stuff here is that I can cycle through pretty easily to see those. You can also see if there's any conditions set up with those. So conditions in Outlaw are also what we like to call conditional variables, right? So if you think about it and say, hey, if my case type is MVA, I only want to show this clause for this particular document, or if it's a premise case, I want to show this. So you can actually set up conditions so that when those conditions are met, that clause will actually show up in your document. So I think that's also an important call out as well. But then again, once we insert this, so we can insert this ice cream history, the cool part is if I needed to make changes to it, you can see I can't really click into here to make changes. If I needed to make changes, I can unlink the clause, but then that's going to break this clause and not keep it connected to the existing one. So if I come into here, I can remove it, I can make my changes. But then if I'm like, oh, you know what, I still need to pull in that additional like ice cream clause that I was working with, and I think it's this one, it's still going to pull in that same clause, that boilerplate clause that we have built out, not this one that has the additional information. So just keep that in mind. The easiest way, though, if you want to edit a clause, so if we click into our clause template, and sorry that I might have done that a little fast, but if we click into our, paragraph here, our clause, it'll tell you where this is linked to. I prefer to build out my clause libraries in their own clause template here. And the reason is because a lot of times if you build them directly into your document, say a few years down the line, you realize, oh, this document isn't really what we thought it was. Maybe we don't want to use it anymore. Let's delete it. Well, if you delete that document, you're going to be deleting all of your clauses. So that's why I really lean towards building them out here, so that you can always retain essentially that information and you don't have to worry about ever deleting info. Okay.
Jordan, that kind of answers this question. Where do you find the clause library and how do you add to it? So just as like a put a bow on it, Jordan created a completely separate document for the clause library. When you are in Outlaw, you have the ability within other templates to have clauses added to the clause library, but that was what she was explaining. It's more helpful to have it all in one place. That way, you know exactly where you need to go to make updates or edits. You don't have to worry about accidentally deleting them. And you would add to it very similar to any other document. So you would go in and maybe, Jordan, you can show how to actually input a clause into the clause library template that you have.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines. And then one other question while you're doing that, are clauses entirely static or can there be variables within the clauses, like the client name, the date of
Yeah.
loss?
Yeah, for sure. No, those are both really great questions. Yeah, inside, if you wanted to, right, you don't have to have this built into your own clause library template, if you will. I just prefer it, for those reasons mentioned for ease of use. But you could, like, I'm in a settlement calculator right now. And if I wanted to say, you know what, I really love this settlement language, I'm going to be using it across a bunch of different templates that I have. I can actually paste this in And I'm just doing that just because this one is currently connected to another template, but I can copy in, type in, paste in whatever I want into here. And I can call this, I can name my clause whatever I want. Settlement calculator. If I can spell calculator, there we go. And so I can name this whatever I would like. And now this will be indexed across my templates and I can pull it into other templates. And if you'll notice here, because I think the question was, can I pull in variables? You definitely can. So we can see that this is the project client name that we're pulling in from Filevine. And then we also have our firm name here, which is a fill-in variable that we have. But you can add in, you can add in a party contact if you would want. You can add in any of that information to a clause. And it works really well. That's definitely one of the added benefits of using a clause versus having to code out each individual paragraph. I'm going to delete this one only because we use these templates for other client orgs, but I'm going to go back to my clause template here. And I think on this portion, I think we were also going to talk about how you can like make a change. So as you can see here in my actual template that I'm building out right now, if I realize, oh, you know what, this is our old clause. This was from 2 months ago. I asked such and such to update it. They didn't. I'm going to go in and update it. Instead of breaking this link, I want to update it across all my templates because odds are if you're using this clause in one template, you're using it in a bunch. That's the reason to use a clause, right? So I want to click into my clause template here. And again, I'm going to roll it back just half a step, but you can see where that one is located. So I can go over to my clause template. And then if I want to say, some very important things here, I'm making a change to it. You'll notice this is saved. I haven't refreshed anything, but I'm just going to pop over to my test template that I'm building out, and those changes have already been reflected. So it works really well. It's like a kind of one directional sync where it's going to update whatever your base boilerplate language is or your clause, and it's going to push it out to all your templates. Now, typically the question I get asked next after this is it going to update my templates that I've already generated and I've already sent out documents to clients or other people? The answer is no. Once it has been generated as a document, it's not going to retroactively go and update that. And for the most part, that's a good thing. You don't want to like be adding any additional terms and services or anything after the fact when people have signed a document or other things like that. So this will just be for future documents that you generate, but you only have to update it once. And now I'm done. I've updated my clause and I don't have to worry about it on any of the other documents that I'm pulling this into.
And you'll notice it only updated on the section that's still linked. The one that Jordan unlinked and made edits to does not have those updates. So if you unlink them, it breaks that connection, as we mentioned. If you keep them linked, it'll allow for updates across the board.
Absolutely. Yep, that's a really good call out. So that's a really great reason to use the clause library. Now, another question I get asked is like, oh, I have a bunch of images that I want to then like transpose across different templates. Images in the clause library don't work exactly like that at this time. And so this is mainly for text, for variables, for other things like that. But the cool part is you can actually build out, if you wanted to do footers and have like an image here, you could technically build out a footer on the clause library or on like a existing template, maybe for your letterhead. So when you start a template from existing, which if you guys are familiar, or I can go over that too, basically this makes a copy of an existing template. So for example, I have one of my caption templates here, pretty straightforward, pretty basic. But if I had built in this, when I go to start a new template and I say start from existing and I choose my caption, it is going to basically pull that information into a template for me. And so I have this already formatted and then I can just add in the body of my pleading or, my litigation document. So if you had built out, some custom footers, I do think this is maybe an image. Let's go look. But if you had built out an image there, it is going to bring it across and make a copy of it onto your new template that you're creating. So it does work in that manner. It's just not exactly a clause. Well, it is an image. I don't have one uploaded. Again, this is a sandbox, so we don't have everything built out all the way it should be. But it's just some good examples of how you can build out your outlaw as well.
And for those of you that haven't played around with those outlaw variables, Those are things that you're not tracking in Filevine, but you want brought into Outlaw. And for images specifically, you can see Jordan has one that allows you to add an image in. So if the image changes, um, each time that you generate it or for each client, this gives you a little bit of flexibility. If the image is going to be the same across the board on every template that you generate, you can add an image in there and that image will be the one that shows up every time. So it is a little bit more dynamic, gives you a little bit of flexibility if you add an image or not for when you're generating.
Yep, for sure. And another good call out to this too is you can notice I do have two different footers. So like if one of my footers maybe I had two different office locations or something like that, and I want the footer to display the address of each one, right? I don't want both footers showing up at the same time. That's actually some built-in logic that it won't allow you to do that. You can't. So if you notice this one with my image, I can't save from start of document because this one above here is already started document. But if I came in here and I said, do we have a good one? I mean, I could make it based on the jurisdiction, right? And then what I can do is come in here and I do have to also put the one on here. Jurisdiction is unknown. There we go. Then I will be able to essentially now change this to the started document because conditionality wise, both these paragraphs are not going to show up at the same time. So that allows me to have a lot of footers that I can build in. A lot of times I see it with custom headers, like if people have multiple jurisdictions or they have a letterhead built out for each of their attorneys. This is how we typically handle that because the dynamic header that's in Outlaw, you can only upload one letterhead and one logo at a time. So if you have multiple office locations, multiple jurisdictions, multiple attorneys, whatever it may be, sometimes multiple company iterations that are slightly different logos, you would have to use that custom version of setting up your letterhead and logo and footer there. And that wasn't the one I was on. I also wanted to mention on this. So now if we have the footer that's going to pull in like this, obviously our image letterhead would show up, which I have uploaded here. We can see our Vine Skills logo. So that's kind of how that information would work. And essentially you can always come over here and preview this too. So if you set up the conditionalities, and I think we based it on jurisdiction, which I don't see that. Hold on, I have to add the variable so that I can make a selection here, but let's just call it it's juris. There we go. Spelling's hard. Okay, so we can come up here, and now what's essentially going to happen is because this litigation jurisdiction is not going to be filled out, if this loads, excellent. It's probably going to populate my first footer, which is down here, and it's populating the page number, versus if I fill this in literally with anything, it's now going to populate Vine Skills here. So you can set up better conditionalities. Jurisdiction in this case isn't the best example, specifically on this pleading document, but you can run with it and understand like how you can use the conditionalities and header and footer for that. Cool. All right. Let's see what else we can talk about. I feel like footers are one we don't talk about a lot. We could talk about footers for a little bit. But footers are cool. There obviously are some situations where you need to add in a footer or a footnote to that specific document or area. And so to do that, when you're inserting a variable, it's very similar. You, instead of doing a connected variable or one of these fill-in variables that lives on the Outlaw template, you can come in and actually insert a footnote. You can either add a new one or select from existing. And if you have different ones, I only have one other footnote on this, on this document. But if you had other ones, you could pull those in and populate it. A new one here, we can say Free Help Wednesday. Cool. We added that as our footer here or our footnote. And so you can see when I click into it, I can always still edit this text if I would like to. Or now if I try to add in another footnote from existing, I'm going to have a couple different options in this drop down. So that is really nice. One thing right now I want to make a call out for the footnote is that you can't currently add a variable in here. So if I tried to add one for test, You can see it lets me type it, but it's not actually a variable like we would see up here because we can see this test variable is an image. So it's not going to allow me to add in those variables there. But for the most part, a lot of the footnotes that our clients are generating don't necessarily have to pull in, specific variables from Filevine or Outlaw. Cool, cool, cool. Let's see what else we can say. We could also talk about repeaters. I feel like that's something that's not utilized as much. Maybe also we could just talk about some of these special items down here. But basically, a repeater works very similar to a collection section table. And a collection section table, just to give you guys an example, is if we come into here, it's pulling in from, your expenses, your meds, your liens, anywhere that is a collection section in Filevine. It's called a collection section table because you can only pull in from collection sections. You can't pull in from case summary. You can't pull in from a static section. So just keep that in mind. You can build in tables into Outlaw that can then handle and you can fill in data without it being in Filevine, but you do have to build that from scratch. It's not like a pre-templated one that you can just pull in. So repeaters work very similarly. You have to choose a data source and it has to be a collection section. So if we want to pull in information and we want to repeat all the liens in a paragraph format versus having them be, a collection section table, we can do that. Now you'll notice here, it might be a little small, zoom in, but this part here where it says you have to use that squiggly bracket instead of the bracket that looks like this. If you use the bracket that is your traditional bracket that we've been using, it's not going to allow you to repeat information. It's just going to pull in one item again and again and again, which defeats the purpose of a repeater. Unless you're always saying, hey, the project client owes this much to this lien holder, right? And then the lien holder would be the one changing. But basically, to show you guys, we're going to type this in. We can see we have our lien type here. So maybe we wanted to type in lien type, lien holder, their full name, and then probably the amount that we would want to see. Let's pull in the initial lien amount. So I coded those out very quickly, but just to recap, you do just put in the squiggly bracket and then you can start typing in a search phrase. So if I was looking for the type or the final lien amount right after reductions, I can start typing in final here and it's going to show me these options. So that's the easiest way to insert a variable, either like this, or if you were also just doing it with the bracket and we're trying to find liens, we could still just type in final lien amount and you can see that that populates. Perfect. So then once we have this, kind of boilerplate template ready to go, what we would want to do is also configure this. We want to configure what data is going to be pulling in. So for this exercise, I'm pulling in the lien type, the lien holder, and then let's find the other one. I like to use the Command F for finding things. If not, you would have to scroll through and look how tiny that scroll bar is. Nobody's got time for that. So we just come in here, we're going to search for this. We're going to say initial, right? So we can see the initial lien amount here. And we just hit save. So this step is important because a lot of times if you don't configure it, when you go to click select liens or anything like we have over here, nothing would populate. So that's just kind of one thing that we can be aware of here. And also, you're not even seeing, this is another great thing, didn't even plan for this, but you're not seeing that select liens. It should be right here in between ice cream and medical provider information. But because we likely haven't activated this template or connected this back to Filevine, it's not pulling in enough information to recognize that there is a collection section that it can pull information from. So for example, if we come back here, we do have this activated. But we also don't have the proofing ID in there. And the proofing ID is a really cool thing because let me just double check where my sandbox is. But basically, if we go into our Filevine, let's go into our Darth case here. I can pull in the project ID or the project number, right? A lot of times it's also in your vitals, depending on how you have your vitals set up. But I can actually pull this in and then verify when I generate this that there is information here. So it looks like we do have one lien in this client project. So if I come into here, we're going to save that. We're going to let it save for a minute. Awesome. Now, if we go to the preview as, you can see that select liens is popping up for us. Previously, it wasn't there because there was no way for this document to know if there was any liens. And so then if we come in here, we can select liens. This one, we didn't do a good job filling out all that information, right? But we do have the workers' comp as under lien type, so we can still pull that in and it would repeat that information for us. But you'll notice because the other two areas, which were the lien holder and initial lien amount, were empty, it did not pull in information. But if I came in here and I filled this in, let's see, I'm trying to think who we have in here. We don't have a Harry? Come on. I would have thought we had a Harry in here. So we can just put Harry and then let's do $1,000. So as soon as I update this now, and if I were to regenerate this and pull in those liens, it should show up that amount. So now when I pull in this information, it's showing us a breakdown. And specifically, if I were to come in here and we just added another one here as well, that's fine. Some of these things that we're entering won't make sense, but that's why it's a sandbox. And so we'll just enter those random bits. We'll come in here, we'll make another selection. And now you can see we're pulling in a couple different liens. We can either select all, or we can select one of those. We can also filter by the lien type if we wanted to arrange them alphabetically, whatever works. And then you can see now this is what it looks like. Because there's multiple liens, it's going to repeat this paragraph of data for each one of those. So that's how you can build in a repeater. I see a lot of clients using these. If you are using like a parties tab or a defendants tab, and you're specifically working in litigation or pleading documents, and you want to pull these into a certificate of service or something like that, you can just situate one of these instead of coding out all the different iterations, because there might be 5 different defendants and all their defense counsel. You can just set this up, and it was pretty easy to set up. And then you can just, depending on the document, it's going to populate the correct number of paragraphs that you need based on your selection. So that's pretty cool. In some cases, people do use them on the settlement calculator. An important call out there is that this isn't going to total. So this wouldn't total up to 1,500. You would still have to build in some formulas or other things to handle that. But some people do like seeing this in a paragraph format versus a collection section table.
And
So,
you can
yeah.
add actual words into the repeaters. Those will just repeat every time. And as Jordan mentioned, if you use any of the blue variables, the ones that are connected with that bracket plus, those will just repeat the same data every time. And so if you want the client's name to repeat in that sentence, you can totally do that using that information. And that will show up again in every selection that you have in here. The tables won't bring in kind of that plain text or those connected variables in the same way. So just a note there.
Yep, that is a good call out. But yeah, I don't see too many more questions, and I know we're almost at time here. But yeah, if you guys have more questions, if there's something that you saw here today that you were like, oh, that's really cool, I didn't know that. Maybe there's some other things you didn't know, you're interested in having a one-on-one session or some training, you can always contact us. We have monthly and also hourly plans, then we're here to help. And then there's obviously a lot more to FVDA. It's hard to cover it all in an hour. I always tell my clients that when we do our main training. So if there's something else that you're interested in, or you've heard this, or you've seen another firm that has this thing, let us know. We can definitely point you in the right direction or set up some training sessions with you. So yeah.
One other thing that might be helpful, might be overlooked. Jordan, if you could just open up a template and go to the Elements tab. The elements in any template is going to show you all of the variables that you've brought in, whether they're Filevine connected or otherwise. There is a trash can icon for ones that are not actually used. So as you all are creating documents or templates, if you've added something in that you no longer need, or if it's red, that means you've probably removed it from Filevine. And so you can come in and remove those items to just clean up your template. In some instances, like if you've used a party variable, those show up in Filevine when you go to add or generate a new document. So if you're like, why does it keep showing or asking me to add this person in. We're not using that in the template. It's likely that you originally added it and you just didn't actually use the variable. So you would want to come in and just clear out that so that you don't get that prompt anymore.
Hmm. Yep. Yeah, and I think also too, just highlighting last bits of little knowledge there, but these red fields, I know they're in the back end and you're like, oh, I'm not using them. What does it matter if they live on the template? They can cause some problems in the back end. They basically kind of like cache information there, and it won't sometimes allow new information to be brought into the document. So that's particularly bad if you go in and you generate a document and information is not pulling in, but you're like, oh, my incident date's filled in, my project clients filled in. Why isn't this information pulling into Filevine or into your document? And the answer is probably because you have some of these sneaky little things hiding out in the back. So anytime I see red fields back here, it's always best case just to remove them. And if they don't have the trash can next to them and they're still red, there's likely red variables on your actual template here that you need to remove and then re-add them, whatever the new ones are. So just keep that in mind. There's a lot of kind of back-end knowledge as well that we're happy to walk you guys through if you ever need help with your templates. So just let us know.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jordan. And as always, thanks for all of your knowledge. Hopefully you all learned something today. As Jordan mentioned, we can help with it all. So if you have been in FVDA or you're thinking about getting it, feel free to reach out to us. We can discuss our plans and ongoing kind of assistance or help with building out those documents. We've done it all. Jordan especially has kind of all of the new things that FVDA incorporates. Jordan is on top of it. She does a ton of videos on our website, but there's always little tips and tricks that are helpful to have some one-on-one consultation for, or just figuring out how to create, combine all of the different things that come with FVDA or Outlaw. So feel free to reach out to us. Our emails are just our first name at vineskills.com. As I mentioned earlier, this session was recorded, so we will put it up on our website by the end of the week. You can also view all of our previous sessions. Jordan has done a few FVDA sessions at this point with free help, so you can always look at those as well. We've gone over some other items in there. And then hopefully you all join us for a future free help session, and reach out if you would like to, again, engage in any of our services. Thank you so much. And thank you again, Jordan. Hopefully you have a great rest of your day.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.